Hello, everybody. Welcome to Outlawed Thoughts, episode 67. This one's alien talk. Really just a general discussion on all the UFO alien stuff. I brought on Adam Nutter, comedian extraordinaire, because I found you were one of the people on Twitter who had sort of a different take than I did. So I wanted to sort of have somebody who had a different, a different take on the whole thing.
Yeah, man. It's interesting for sure. So I can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, so I figured what I'll do here is I'll intro it with this article I found, which is from Vox, that goes over some of the stuff with the UFO hearings. But then I think the conversation, once we get through that stuff, will get into a broader discussion of like just the whole thing in general.
Okay.
And I think because I was trying to find an article that summarized what was said in the hearings, and by the quote whistleblower, the Grouch guy.
Yeah.
I wanted to find an article that sort of summarized it, so I didn't have to sit through an hour-long video because everything's
Fair.
all...
Yeah. No. Or the clips are like not enough, and you're like, I don't know what the fuck they were talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to have the context of
Yeah.
what was said before. So this one is, what's up with those claims the U.S. has recovered UFOs? The ultimate woe if true, especially if true part. This is by Andrew Prokop. He is very pro-cop. Spelled with a K, but I'm counting it.
I think Mirko. I think Mirko Krokop from old MMA days.
Yeah. He fought. That was one of the ones that Shaw
Unfortunately,
fought.
which is
Uh-huh.
Mirko Krokop is a legend, and Shaw caught him on the end of his fucking career.
That's immediately when you mentioned that name. That was the
Yeah, I
first thing that
know.
popped in my head.
It's a bummer because that dude was like a legit special forces
I used
dude.
to use him in UFC 2.
Yeah, he's an
Uh,
animal, dude.
he was great. The headline is a bold one. Intelligence officials say U.S. has retrieved craft of non-human origin. Last month's story in the publication The Debrief read, the phrase "woe if true" was coined for a situation like this, especially especially the "if true" part. Here's what seems true enough at this point. A former government official named David Grouch, who has worked in the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the National Reconnaissance Office, has gone public and is saying some curious things. Most recently, in public testimony before a House Representatives Committee Wednesday. Grouch said that in recent years he worked with the federal government's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. Yes, that's a real thing, set up to investigate reports of strange flying objects. Grouch says that he's been told of secret government programs that have intact and partially intact vehicles of non-human origin. He says he's been told both the U.S. government and other governments have engaged in a publicly
No,
unknown
yeah.
war to try to reverse engineer technology from these craft. So I'll stop here and we'll sort of go from there. So the base thing, the most important thing that I think he said in the beginning of this whole thing, during the testimony specifically, was about the non-human craft thing. This is what I've been seeing the headlines run with. This is the sort of broader discussion is, the UFO community will say, well, the government just confirmed that UFOs are real, that they have them. And so in the field of discourse online, I feel like I've seen sort of three reactions. Those reactions have been, this is entirely psyop, so it's this is a distraction. I've seen references to things like Project Bluebeam being made. And then on the other side of that, I saw people doing the exact opposite. So people just buying into it wholesale. This is completely real. UFOs confirmed. Alamaus confirmed. Uh, and then sort of where I'm at, which is the third option, which was somewhere in between, because I've looked at a lot of UFO stuff over the last like 4 or 5 years as I got sort of more interested in it. And this is sort of a give and take in this situation because I think some of this stuff is legitimate and some of it is complete and utter horseshit that's being used to kind of clutter what is actually being put out there, which is what's been done in the past in UFO stuff. Um, so I don't know. What is your take on this part of it? Like him saying we have crafts.
So okay, so my whole like take on the whole, it's like, yeah, there's like something's going, like there's something going. There's too much testimony and videos out there that are unexplainable. It just is what it is. Like it would be illogical for us to be like it's nothing. There's something now. What I think they're saying is lies. That's what it comes down to. I just don't think they're being honest about a goddamn thing. In fact, when I was a kid, I'm 36, right? So when I was a kid and when I was growing up, dude, up until like very, very recently, right? I was always a believer in like aliens and space and shit. And then the last 4 or 5 years, I was like, I don't really buy into a lot of anything, like at all. What you're telling me that anything is right. And then as soon as remember, like 3 years ago, that's when the government started dropping like subtle hints and like UFO shit. They started like throwing
Right.
into the
So this is what I hear from people, and this is where I think we will have a bit of a back and forth. Is to me, a lot of people I've heard from have said, well, this was sort of started 3, 4, 5 years ago, and we saw stuff introduced with the David Fravor videos and the Tic Tac stuff, and that was sort of the jumping off point. But I'll point people towards his Lemino video on YouTube, which breaks some of this stuff down pretty well, and he talks about the dates in that video, and it's something that I don't think anybody ever brings up. But the David Fravor video and most of those videos where we see those blips on radar systems that were being tracked by planes, those videos were not from those times when they were released. They were actually much earlier videos. And in the
oh
case of the
right,
David Fravor video, that video first surfaced not from the US government releasing it. It actually surfaced on a UFO forum and was uploaded to that forum and was viewed there for years without anybody knowing whether it was genuine or not until the US government released their copy confirming that that one was real. Now, the US government's copy was a better resolution,
right,
but it begs the question of who uploaded that one onto that forum, which people can question back and forth whether or not that was the government in the first place.
no, for sure,
But that wouldn't be the first time that legitimate footage like that has made its way to forums, Reddit even. Just recently,
exactly,
there was a forum, a guy who runs an internet website that talks about experimental weapons and experimental stuff around Area 51. And it was a big news story if you Google it. The guy was raided by the CIA and FBI and had his house torn apart because they claim he was publishing classified documents. So somewhere on his website, he had actually gotten a hold of legitimate documents and published them, and the government said, "Nah, we're gonna just come in and raid your whole shit for that."
right.
Um,
What is it? What's is it 4chan where it's like all the green text and you can like
mm-hmm.
answer questions, right? Okay. So I read this 4chan, this very interesting 4chan thread by this guy who this is posted 3 years ago, I want to say, around, so way before all this shit, way before, right? And this guy goes, "Hey, listen, here's the deal. I haven't worked with close to UFO shit in the last 2 years of as in him posting this date of him, posting this to 4chan. But he's like, I could say this, that I do know for a fact that the government does have, other things, and then he went on like a whole,
Right,
answer Q&A thing, and the things he was saying was paralleling a lot of what we're seeing now. And
right,
I'm like, if this was a hoax, then this guy is batting 1,000 as a troll. Which, come on, dude. I mean, the coincidence, right? I mean, what are the odds? So he was saying a lot, and like, he was being, and again, the way he was speaking was kind of honest. He's like, I don't know that. He's like, I don't know where they're from. He's like, I don't know. He's like, I just know this little part or this little part or what I hear. He's like, I don't know. He's not like coming out and being like, they're from the Andromeda galaxy and they're from, he's not saying that. He's like, they have shit. He's like, they think it's in the ocean. They don't know how long it's been here. It puts out craft. They go you get this guy saying each craft is specific to a job they're doing. And that's what he's saying. Now, you asked me before, like, what do I think of all this? Again, I believed in aliens until 5 years ago. And then I thought, nah, I think it's all bullshit. Now, again, it's something. There is something, but as a Catholic guy and a believer in God and Jesus and all that shit, I don't believe in aliens. It's
Okay,
stupid.
so we can have that. We can have that discussion. So my grandmother studied religion, so that's something I talk with her a lot about. That was what her degree was in back in the day, and she went to a Catholic school, so she was raised Catholic. She believes in aliens, and she will tell you, like, in her opinion, you can believe in it from a religious perspective. The
I've
way
heard
she,
I definitely heard the argument
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
and even in the 50s and 60s, there were people who were talking about, like, because that was an argument that happened in like the mid 60s to the early 70s, was actually a pretty decent debate in the Catholic community around whether or not you could consider whether aliens, if they were created not in this galaxy, would be a creation of God or not. And like this whole, like, it was an actual theocratic debate
Right.
that was had.
No, that's fair.
but
Here's how I look at it. As we know,
but you could take the Michael Knowles route and just say they're demons, which
well,
is
that's kind
interesting.
of so. This is what I okay. So there's so much to talk about. I'm gonna lose my brain. I'm gonna lose train of thought. So like this is again us being the good libertarians we are and the good ANCAPs and all that shit that we are. We know the government hates religion and family structure, right? We know that.
True.
We all know that because what do those two things do? Directly counteract the need for government, right? And what does government need? They need you. They need you to need them. I think that is just another monkey wrench in the cog of wheels to try to devalue God and religion. That's what I think it is. So that's why when Catholics are like, "Oh, we could." Yeah, well, you're dumb. I think you're being tricked. Honestly, I think you're being. I think it's just another fucking again another way to be like, no, this is God doesn't really exist. How could he exist if there's other things? And that disproves your theory of he created in your image. Well, because I think you're lying. Just like you just try to just like the government tries to destroy the family structure with all the other welfare and all that shit, right? Same shit, just different party.
Yeah.
Second part of this is like, okay, so I don't think they're off-world life. What I do think is one of two things: either they are fallen demons or angels, whatever the fuck you want to say, or they're like three things. They're in the earth, like hollow earth shit, possibly. I don't know. Or third thing is interdimensional, which I believe to be the most probable truth. Is it some sort of interdimensional thing?
Okay. So I like the interdimensional idea you have, because that's actually something they've been referencing in a lot of these releases, kind of as a secondary thing.
Sorry, not to cut you off. But in that 4chan thing, again, 3 years ago, this guy posted this shit. So way before all this was ever even spoken about, he said, because people asked him, like, where do they come from? He goes, we don't know. I've been told we don't know, but I've heard they think it's possible interdimensional travel.
Right.
So it is
two
interesting.
of the things that have been said by these quote whistleblowers have referenced the idea of either interdimensional travel or the concept of time travel and the process of what that would look like. There's a few issues I have with the time travel idea, because it gets into these concepts of, well, you have this issue of, once a time machine exists in one singularity of time, it sort of exists in every singularity of time, and that's one of the problems of why time scenes couldn't really exist in the concept that we know them, or at least we know they don't yet because you don't see them.
I've also heard the theory of if you do have a time machine, you could only go forward, because how would you go back to something that doesn't exist? Like there's no base.
Well, there's also the concept that once you time travel, you're not really traveling within your time. You're engaging into a new universe entirely.
I mean,
or a new
truth is, no one really fucking knows. So it's just all speculation.
It's all just me.
We're just ripping off Back to the Future theories and fucking Terminator theories. That's all we're doing. We're just repeating 80s sci-fi movies is what we're doing.
It's commie gobbledygook. None of it makes actual sense.
But I want to address the Gersh guy, because I said this in my tweet, which I know was the one you're referencing. It's like, again, for 80 years since the Roswell, which is 47, right? The Roswell incident was 1947, I believe. So for 80 years, the government silence people both physically with money, but threatening whatever. They vehemently denied alien life, right? And they but no, it doesn't. Like people get mad. Like you see people getting mad. Like no, that shit's fake. Like fuck. And then all of a sudden, 3 years ago, like, yo, aliens exist. People are like, whoa. And then 3 years go by, and then this guy
Right.
just
So
walks to the front of the line.
this is the thing that I probably will. That was the part of the tweet that I think I disagree with, because I started looking into the alien stuff, expecting to find the UFO thing in general, expecting to find exactly what you just explained. That this stuff just popped up from the government recently, that they don't have involvement in this stuff, that there isn't really much interest in it in the public sphere. But the truth is, so like, and this will tie into what I'm going to say, but Project Bluebeam. You hear this referenced
Oh,
all
I
the
believe
time,
that.
right?
I believe they're going to use that, by the way.
So let me explain to you why that's dumb.
Okay, let me hear it.
Project Bluebeam was a book, not a classified document. It was created by a guy named Mondstadt. He's a writer, Serge Mondstadt.
Yes, I know this. Continue.
Right. The guy was completely wackadoo, right? His opinion. He thought the government took his kids from him. It was a whole OCS case bullshit and stuff like that. The guy's whole life is just stupid. And he wasn't some government agent. He wasn't some
Right. No,
spy.
I know
He
that.
was a
Yeah.
guy who wrote a fiction book. And everybody decided that because he claimed what he wrote in that fiction book was based on classified documents, that from then on they would claim that this was a real thing. There are legitimate documents that have been unclassified or discovered that the government has said things referencing holograms and smoke screen detection and things like this, and AR lasers, a big one that gets referenced. But most of this stuff is archaic. When you go even into, yes, basically, so he's L. Ron Hubbard. Yeah, that's kind of what it became.
Yeah.
When you look at in Japan, right? There's an area in Japan where they build a lot of these high intensity holograms and lasers, some of the best that you can find. These are the ones that are getting used in concerts for these big aerial dragons that are flying over top, right? Those things involve thousands of pounds of equipment suspended in air, in the stages, on the floor, in this, it's not this, when you look at the Battle of Los Angeles, right? This was an event that happened where
Yeah.
planes started shooting at something, they all converged.
That picture
in
is
the sky.
awesome.
Right. It's nuts.
Yeah.
And people go, well, that could have been a hologram. And I'm going, well, that was in the how long ago did you think they have this technology?
Well, so here's where I want to counter your point is I knew the whole blue beam thing. I say blue beam because it's just like, in the lexicon now, and everybody knows what I'm saying when I say that. I do
think it's possible the government does something like that.
Because let's be honest, dude, you really think that they don't have tech that we don't know, that we don't know about? I'm sure you ever hear the flat screen, the flat screen thing from the 40s and 50s? Did you ever hear about this?
Yes.
For anybody who hasn't heard, essentially they came up with flat screen technology in like the 50s for like TVs and shit, pretty much. And the government came along and was like, oh, that looks great, man. We're gonna take that. And they went, no. And they went, no, we're going to take that. And they just took it. And then we didn't hear about it until the 90s again, or the 2000s.
Yeah.
So, there's no way they don't have shit. And now look at how drones could be used now for, shows and stuff like that. You could trick people easily. Again, I'm assuming they have shit we don't know about. I mean, I think that's fair to say,
So I don't think you're wrong in the fact that, this loops back to what I was saying before, which is that the government has done these controlled releases in the past. And the way they've done it is in the 60s and 70s, there was sort of this uprising of UFO culture. People started talking about the stuff more and more. You started having tourist attractions open up and all that. It created these conventions where a lot of people would meet, talk about their experiences, and you would have these, quote, whistleblowers who would show up to those conventions and tell their stories. Most of the time, it was horseshit. These were people that were, if you've ever heard of Bell, the first name's escaping
Art Bell?
me, but Art Bell, yeah. If you've ever listened to that, it's similar to that, where there's definitely some people who called in to Art Bell, whether you like it or not, and we're telling the truth. We're actually talking about experiences they had or believed they had. But there was also a lot of people just calling in to fuck around. And as we now know, there were a lot of government people calling in who were planting red herrings, even on Art Bell's show, that have been.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, dude. That's another thing
uh,
too. Is like, I truly believe that like government misinformation for this shit
right.
is
So
giant. It's for sure true. Yeah.
there are multiple figures
Yeah.
within the UFO community who we now know were literal government agents, were planted there by the FBI to give out information, whether false or true, depending on who you like, whatever opinion you take, because it's hard to know. Uh,
Well,
on
like,
one hand, you can say the government sends in these people to give out bad information to take these people off the track of real stuff. Or it's the argument that they come in and put out this information that's genuine so that it can come from this crackpot community and just slowly seep into the environment.
Patrice O'Neill had a fucking great take on O&A years ago, talking about just conspiracy, 9/11, all that shit, or just conspiracy in general and government
I
disinformation.
think I've heard him talking about 9/11, so I might know the clip.
And government disinformation. So I just my whole computer, my whole screen went black. I was like, did my computer just die on him? Oh my god, we're good. He made a great point where he goes, the problem with like conspiracy theorists or people, yelling shit out is he's like, let's say you look at a guy in the street and it's some crazy homeless guy and he's covered in his own shit, and he's taking marbles and he's shoving marbles up his ass and he's yelling like 2 + 2 = 4. You could look at that guy and go, wow, he looks fucking crazy. But 2 + 2 does equal 4. So like, it's not always like how the message is being said. Just parse the message, listen to the fucking point. Like, so the crazy guy might be crazy, but he's right. And
Right.
I think the government did a fucking great job, right? Isn't conspiracy theorist itself a term coined by the CIA to
Shortly
disprove?
after the Kennedy assassination, yeah.
Right, yeah, to disprove people from looking into cover-ups. It's
Right.
like, yeah, so of course, so that's why I like people, but like guys like Alex Jones or not even guys like Alex Jones. He's an extreme example, but what's Stephen Greer, Dr. Greer, that
Yeah,
dude.
that guy's a
That's
fruitcake,
what
though.
dude. That's my point. Is I don't trust these guys are fucking. I think shill. I think they're
No, that
government
guy's a
shills.
grifter.
Right, all of them. They're all.
Uh,
I think all the. But I think anybody who's in the spotlight, like anybody who gets to be
yeah.
on Netflix, is like you might not. Okay, they might not be like hand in hand with the government, but they either don't know fully the true story or they're working with. You know what I'm saying? It's not like legit. Like it's not all the way legit. There's just no way.
Yeah,
Like
no,
they
I do
kill for
agree
less.
with you there.
Like,
There's definitely like, so this is sort of the eternal problem with the concept of a whistleblower, because the guy worked for the government, and so I automatically don't trust this dude. This guy still probably is getting a paycheck and draw from the government, so there's a level of
yeah.
this in which I'm very hesitant to
Yes,
trust anything that he
exactly.
says. At the same time, though, you have this problem of what happens when somebody, it's the Jesus concept, right? What if Jesus comes back and everybody's
Right.
just like, "Who the fuck are you?"
Shut up, bitch.
Like,
What's this queer with the long hair? Like, get out of here.
Who's
I
the
just beat him up.
hippie?
Yeah. He just take the shit out of him. He's like, ow,
It's
again.
exactly. So it's
But he
like
fights back this time. He has Superman powers and he just takes over the world.
he just turns into Homelander.
Yeah. Dude, I would totally be Homelander. By the way, if I had Superman powers,
Yes,
I am
absolutely.
Homelander. I am
Yes, no
Homelander.
doubt. Adam's like, I'm just doing it for the titty milk.
Yeah. Oh my god, I didn't even want the powers. I just want that.
Yeah, it's no, I legit think it is that sort of concept where once you almost have to like let these guys come out and say what they're saying and then just weigh whatever they're saying and sort of come up with your own opinion, because you can't really take these people at face value, but at the same time you can't discredit them, otherwise you're never gonna know what the fuck's going on
So
if
I
somebody
always
does come
no,
out.
you're right. But I look at this again, like I said, like this guy just parades himself out unharmed, and I go, look at Assange, who just let off some war crimes, which is nothing compared to hiding alien possible life, right? So
Well, you think
Assange,
so,
like he
but it's
raped everyone in Europe. They try to frame every rape in Europe on him, and then
You'd
they
think
fucking do everything
so,
they
but
can. But like this guy is like, aliens, cool, right? It
it's
just doesn't make
strange
sense
to
to me.
me how little people seem to care about it. Like,
Okay, I heard a great point on this too, and I agree with this. Rent's still due tomorrow.
mm-hmm.
Like same thing with the simulation shit. If we found out tomorrow that we're in a simulation, oh, I'm not gonna kill myself. I'm just gonna live this shit out because like I
Yeah.
still have feelings and pain and thought. Like you know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't matter if I interpret that as that, if that's what that is. So like it's like we still have to go about our day unless the aliens start enslaving people, quote unquote. You know, what I'm hyperbolizing here, whatever. If that's the case, then I still gotta go do comedy for money, and you still gotta go to
Right.
work. Like that doesn't stop. Like we still have to have
Right.
relationships and marriages and fucking and talk to our parents and friends and really it doesn't that shit doesn't end, dude. And now we just do that with the knowledge of pop bullshit. You know what I'm saying? It's like District 9. Nothing stopped. Right? You ever see District 9?
Yes.
District
Yes.
9 in that which right, great movie. Aliens fucking ship, suspends itself because it kind of loses the part of or South Africa, and the world just kept going. And they were there right in the movie for like 10 years until everything started going haywire. So for 10 years, there's a giant alien ship, and people were just like, "Well, that's crazy." Well, the Giants are playing Sunday, so we got to go. Let's go, G-men. Like, I don't give a fuck. Like, that's the thing is like,
Yeah.
oh, are aliens here? Cool. Do the Giants still have a season? Then I'm good. Like, are they still playing? Just look at the football season. Then I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. It is interesting. There's sort of a. I do feel like that's true. It's like, obviously you still have to wake up and do whatever you got to do the next day, regardless of what's going on. And the simulation stuff is sort of the same. I don't really buy into that stuff just from uh, as a concept, just because I don't really think it
No,
works.
I
But
joke around about it a lot because it's funny, but like I don't really believe it, obviously, because I believe in again God and Jesus and stuff. But like, but like again, it doesn't matter. My point still is like,
yeah,
would it
no,
matter? No, because if you shot yourself, you'd be like, ow, like you feel all of that. It's not like you're like, well, the simulation tells me otherwise. Like, no, dude, you're feeling all that pain. So go ahead, you could do that, but I'm just gonna
right,
just go about the
right.
simulation then and just ride it out if that's the truth, or why would you stop it? It's stupid.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I talked about UFO stuff on here before. One of the things I talked about was this. So this is one of the things that I expected them to talk about in these hearings that never got mentioned once. Frankly, I think it's because uh, all the Alaskan senators who were decent enough to talk about this shit are all dead. Well, if you don't know, this UFO council this Grouch guy was on, it was started by an Alaskan senator who saw a UFO, talked about it publicly in Alaska, and said, "I'm gonna open up a whole thing into this because I want to know what's going on." And then this Grouch guy goes up the chain of command and gets told basically, "No, you're actually on the like fake committee. The real committee is over here," and like getting to do all the real shit.
I,
And so that's what made him quote whistleblow.
I
But
also,
it's like,
it wasn't this Grouch guy, like he was still like allowed to present this stuff. Like it's not right, like
so
because they're
what that
saying they're not
basically
giving it because
means is he was given a handler basically, and that handler's job because he went through the correct channels to whistleblow. This is why I got irritated with people giving the guy shit, is because Snowden, like, right, the reason Snowden is on the run and in this situation that he is in and not able to return to the US is because he allowed the government to have an out, right? The out was that he didn't actually whistleblow. He just put the information out there.
right, but we could all agree
And
that's kind of bullshit. But go on.
no, I agree with you, but this is
Yeah, I
this
know.
is the loophole, and this
Right,
is
of
the
course,
stuff that I think
yeah.
people in the future need to be thinking about so they don't fuck their lives up. Which, is what you're ultimately trying to do is less how much you're gonna get screwed over in the whole situation. Uh when Snowden did it, he just released his stuff. Well, this guy did the opposite. He actually did the documents and filed as a whistleblower and officially came out and said, I'm going to come out with this information. When you do it that way, you're basically handed a person whose whole job is to decide what it is you can legally say and not say without getting arrested. And so
Okay, that makes
that's why he's stepping all these things, right? He has to say, well, people have told me they've seen this and things like that. Because if he directly implicates somebody it becomes a whole can of worms for him. It opens up a whole chain of
Right.
shit.
Because I remember reading an article or something that was saying that like he was saying at certain times like, well, I'm not allowed to disclose that. Like, so
But I
that
can
right, right.
privately.
Okay.
And
Got
so
it.
he did tell people, like we saw different senators come out over this last couple of weeks saying things publicly that don't really make sense. But if those senators privately met with that guy and were told something, then that would make sense to what they're tweeting. So when you see these senators putting out things talking about, and people are going, well, he didn't actually say this. It's like, well, no, you don't know that because these
Okay.
senators were told things literally that we didn't get to hear. They got to have private conversations with this dude.
So that's essentially just two bros talking about aliens.
Literally what we're doing right now.
Right,
That's what they did.
Right. That's
They
so
sat
funny.
there for a couple hours and got to answer questions that were not allowed to be answered publicly.
See, and this is also a lot of my reservation with a lot of the, again, like we talked about before, how we both agree that the government will on purpose disclose false things as
they've
truth,
just done
right?
it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, so I know this from a military aspect because I've have worked and have been friends with people in the military. Some people who pretty decent levels in the military, and they say like there's a certain level of secrecy where if a project, like even if the name gets disclosed publicly by accident on purpose, they go, it immediately gets scrapped and everyone, the leader gets moved from that project and gets immediately picked up by a different name. They say immediately. Now, this is
right.
not,
Well, if you want evidence of this, that's real quick, is MK Ultra. MK Ultra ended because it was publicized in books
right,
and media, and then immediately started back up in Canada under a different name.
right. That's exactly what they do.
Right.
So that's why though when you hear a lot of times when they're like it's still under the name of, I go, no, it's that's bullshit, misinformation. Like if people
Right.
say like, oh well, in the 50s it was this and it's still that today, no, it's not. There's no way. Because if you know it, if that guy knows it, that means they know that you know
it's
it.
public, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So it's gone. It's a different thing. So that's why I get a little weary of like some of that shit because I'm like, I don't
Area
think that's how it
51
operates.
problem. Because everybody pays attention to Area 51, but no one pays attention to Alaska, which is where I believe they actually do all this testing because it's off-site. Like,
right? Well,
why
if nowhere, dude? I mean, there's no one around,
and it's 730,000 people on a giant landmass that
right?
is only on 1% of that landmass. So you have all this open space.
Area 51 is too
like,
popular.
Yeah, all these places are like even like Mount Shasta. All these places they used to go, they're all too populated now.
Right. Yeah. No, it is interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't, I'm telling you, I just don't buy it. I don't buy the official narrative. Obviously, I don't buy what this guy's saying. He might be telling some truth, but again, okay, I'm also going to point this out.
So I'll break down exactly what I think he thinks, what I think is true in his statements.
Before you do, I want to point out one other interesting point of the whole alien thing. Don't you find it weird how they stopped calling them aliens and they're very making it on purpose to say non-human intelligence?
I do think that loops back to your idea of them possibly not being aliens.
That's
and
my
rather
point.
Being
yes,
other humans that are just
and I believe because I think one of the senators asked him like, "Are they off-world life?" And he was just like, "There's not human intelligence." He kept saying that, so it's like,
yeah.
Right. Like,
so
it's weird.
And we can talk about non-human intelligence that doesn't even need biological, which is something people don't understand.
Like bears are non-human intelligence.
Right.
So like dogs are non-human intelligence.
Right? So there's this idea of what that is, and everybody assumes these gray aliens. I even used a concept of it in the thumbnail for this guy eating the cheeseburger with the mask on, which that's the best stock photo I've ever found on Canva. It's fucking great. But I was like, with what I think he said that I think I buy, I do think they probably do have these craft. I do think that's legitimate, and the reason I think that's legitimate is for two reasons.
Oh, I do too. No, like I said, dude, I believe we have something. Yeah, agreed.
When you look back at like some of the first, so obviously this UFO stuff, everybody goes, well, it all starts when the military starts flying planes, and so everybody's just seeing planes. No, actually, the reason that is because most of these sightings early on came from the military and from pilots and from
Right,
squadrons
because
who
especially back
sighted these
then,
things.
all the people that could really afford planes is the military, or if you're super fucking
Exactly. So
rich,
you
it
see
wasn't
something in the
right.
sky, it's already weird.
Right, right.
Uh, and so these guys were citing random stuff all throughout World War One, World War Two, seeing weird stuff, and you see them almost always, especially in the military stuff, spoken about in the exact same way. They're described under the same concept of what these tic tac sort of devices are that we're now seeing flying around in the Forever video and the Miami Coast video and some of these videos that were released during this that were already out previously, but still. Uh, I think what this points to is basically some kind of craft that something is piloting, because crafts are piloted. Whether it's piloted by a computer system,
Right.
which could be considered intelligence, which is what I
Right.
don't think people are crediting here, is
Oh,
that
like
this could
AI
literally
shit?
be a drone program. And those drones could be run by an AI or run by an offsite computer that has a chip in it. You have no idea how that would look or work from a technological standpoint, but that isn't that far from what we do in our military. So it would make perfect sense. Um, and from my concept, I think we would call that non-human intelligence, right? If it's to a certain extent, we're going to classify it that way. So I think that's something he could be referencing. Not necessarily that these are even, dudes flying around in planes, but rather these are just anamorphic craft that are surveying or looking for things. They don't appear to have weapons on them. They don't appear to assault things. They're not flying into shit. And so there's obviously some form of guidance or intelligence in that way. And it doesn't appear to be anything anybody has. That's the whole thing. Everybody goes, well, the US could be doing this to test their own stuff. And it's like, yeah, but like, just historically, once one military has something, every other military just starts copying it. You would be seeing this everywhere at this point. This has been 50, 60 years of these things being seen. Why aren't you seeing them all over? And the answer is, well, because they're not coming from one source. They're kind of, clearly that's my take on it. But I want to talk about this. So this is the story that I thought they were going to talk about that they didn't, through all the whistleblower stuff, which is one of the stories that I find to be somewhat credible. This is Japan Airlines cargo flight 1628. So it was a UFO incident that occurred on November 17th, 1986, involving a Japanese Boeing 747 200F cargo aircraft. The aircraft was en route from Paris to Narita International Airport near Tokyo with a cargo of, how the fuck do you say that? Boyas? Boyjas? Boyjas wine? I don't know. Boyjas wine on the rev kick to Anchorage, section of the flight at 1711 over eastern Alaska. The crew first witnessed two unidentified objects to their left. These abruptly rose from below and closed to escort their aircraft. Each had rectangular arrays of what appeared to be glowing nozzles or thrusters through their bodies. Um, through their bodies remained obscured by darkness, though their bodies remained obscured by darkness. When closest, the aircraft's cabin was lit up, and the captain could feel the heat on his face. These two craft departed before a third, much larger disc shaped object started trailing them. Anchorage Air Traffic Control requested an oncoming United Airlines flight to confirm the unidentified traffic. But when it and a military craft sighted JL 1628 at about 1751, no other craft could be distinguished. The sighting lasted 50 minutes and ended in the vicinity of Denali. So there's some great sketches and stuff that were given by the captain of this flight in regards to this. I'm going to see if they have them in here. If not, I can Google them real quick. But they're what they claim to have seen. And it's this is one of those stories that I find more credible because of who saw it.
Yeah.
This wasn't like this was a commercial flight, and it's like when you look at the witness accounts, it's like the pilot and the like employees of the plane who are all like, no, we were all like looking out the window at this thing like it was there.
Right.
Like, and so it's just one of those things I've always been like, yes, probably happened, and it was during the Cold War, so the US government would have had an incentive to be like, nah, nothing went on over there, because it's an Alaskan area, which is where they were doing all their military stuff. um so there's some photos of the sketches here that were um, done, but I gotta find them, so it takes me a second.
I'm trying to find this. Have you ever heard of the MH370 video?
MH370. MH370 video. No. Is it a UFO video or is it a.
It is. People. Okay, so people, of course, credit it as CGI and stuff, but I've been reading a lot about this lately, and people really have a hard time also being like, no, this is not CGI. Apparently, this was an airliner that was like abducted by some sort of craft spinning around it, and it was caught by a drone, like a military drone. Like the whole thing was caught on tape, and it was up and and then people go, oh, bullshit. It's but the backstory of how it even got to the internet is like interesting. Like no one could verify like even like the fucking original user or like the IP where it came from. Like it was like hidden. Like it was like very.
So I'm
secret.
reading here. It was over 9 years ago on.
I have the video,
March
by the way, if you want me to play it.
Oh fuck yeah! Okay, I had found a link with just
I
like
found
a
the
quick
video.
descriptor.
That's what I was doing for like 5 minutes. I was trying to find this fucking video. It took forever, but I could share it. I think right, share screen. Yeah,
I think you can.
here. Yeah, I can. Do you see this?
Indeed.
You see this?
Yep.
Okay. So apparently, you see these orbs circling this plane, this jetliner,
Huh.
and you're gonna see this fucking thing like warp out. It's fucking wild. If it's real, it's wild, obviously. But if it's bullshit, it's still pretty good. But
Well, it's convincing because it looks like actual radar.
but you'll see it like watch.
Wow, that is.
Oh, there's more to it. I just gotta find. Hold on.
It's weird how those things are
warps
moving
out.
around it because it seems like it's like just spinning around the actual like middle section of the plane. They're trying to keep in like center of gravity
I'm
almost.
trying to fucking find just a good. Oh, you know what? Here, I got a better one. Here, dude. I got the one with color and shit. This is the other one I was trying to find. Okay, cool. Here it is.
Well, that looked like an overhead FLIR like camera setup.
So watch this shit. Okay, well, obviously.
There we go. Is this that same flight or a different?
Yeah, no, same exact thing, but it was caught from multiple different views from a military shit.
Oh, you can see the thing flying around there.
And then you're gonna see the radar one after this. But look at these.
You know, I'd think they were drones, but they're flying in unison like that at times, and that just seems like.
That's not my mouse. That's the video.
Yeah.
Cursor.
Yeah, when they fly in unison like that, that's odd.
No, those aren't drones, dude. I mean, there's no way you can't.
No,
a plane.
They're going too fast,
gone,
and then just gone.
You see that
Can
flash?
you rewind just a bit to the flash?
And then you'll even see the FLIR version of it after this.
Huh.
And then Let me see if I
Yeah.
can find.
Yeah, this is a non-cropped version of it. You can see the trail lines coming off
Yeah,
those things. So they have propulsion, which is odd, unless that's Airstream, but I don't think it would be because they're not breaking the sound barrier. So those have, yeah, they have a heat signature on them, so
you
they're
see that
giving
shit?
off heat, and
Look at
the
that.
explosion doesn't have
It's
heat.
not. It's not an explosion. Yes, that's why it's not an explosion.
It's not
It's
an
like a. It's like a wormhole
explosion,
or something, or just a fucking warper or whatever. Like gone.
huh?
Isn't that wild? Now again, it could be fake for sure. It could be fucking fake. I don't fucking
I'm
know.
gonna look into it after this. It'll be my project for
But
the next couple
I've been
days.
looking into it. And I'm telling you, dude, it's very interesting. It's
Hmm.
very interesting.
I want a Captain Disillusion video on that.
Is my dad watching right now?
Yes, I highlighted his chat a minute ago. He was commenting on the French wine being hauled by the Japanese
Jesus
plane.
Christ.
No, there's a ton of interesting stories out there and videos like that I think are, you know. Here's the thing, though, right? This is another question. It's like everybody said like this is all just distraction stuff because you had all the Hunter Biden stuff and all this other shit going on, and I'm like, yeah, but like the government doesn't need to do UFO shit to create
Right.
a distraction. They have 1,000 other things they could pull out of the
Agreed.
bag that cause less problems for them down the road. Like I think this dude either wanted to get famous because he wanted to retire and he did have some information he wanted to get out there, or he legitimately felt like he needed a whistleblow, and so he just came out and said what he wanted to say. But he knows he can't say too much without getting fucking thrown under the under the
I
jail.
mean, because here's the other aspect of it, and like I like to be able to have dual thought in my brain. I think that's healthy. Like I do. Okay, let's say this is real. Imagine the weight of knowledge you have. Let's say not even him. Let's say someone deeper than he is, right? Let's say someone who's like dealing with the bodies or whatever the fuck, like that level into the project. Imagine just going home being like, "So chicken for dinner,"
Right, but
like
here's the
it's
thing. People
crazy. Like
say that, and it is crazy, but you think
you could
about
totally do
something
it.
like,
People
right,
can do
we
it.
just recently movie Oppenheimer came out, right?
Yeah.
That's a dude who had the same thing going on.
No, agreed.
Or
No,
Albert Einstein or any of these characters in the scientific community went home with like concepts where like I could build a device that would wipe out humanity tomorrow in my garage
right.
if I
No, no.
really wanted to.
Agree,
Like, you know.
I totally agree. I'm not saying like it's not doable. I'm just saying like imagine like the weight of that, like the pressure
Mm-hmm.
of weight, like of knowledge of that guy to just go home and just easily just be like, so like, want to watch a movie? Just knowing, hey, Dad, if you were listening, I fucking said it was 2 military drones. Pay the fuck attention, old man. Fucking go to bed. Fucking bedtime. uh,
No,
yeah, no,
I
like the weight of that. Like, I can never. That's what I'm saying. I always think of I always try to put myself in that situation. And if I genuinely like again was going into work and my job was to autopsy whatever the fuck I'm autopsying and just be like, hey, you can't
well,
say anything to ever. I'd be like, oh man, you better kill me.
I think
Because,
we
like,
know
I'm
what
not-
happens. You just turn into George Bush Sr. You forget where you were in Dallas on that day. Like you're just like, I don't
He's like, I don't
know.
even
Whoops.
Dallas. Well, I even never even heard Dallas.
Never been there.
Is that an American city?
Barbecue? No.
Is it in America? This is an American city. Dallas. No, I've never heard of it. Sorry.
I thought that was in Mexico. No, it is like it is that though. It's like, do you just kind of just pretend like nothing ever happened, disappear, or do you come out and say something?
Okay, so to look at this from another dual perspective, I deal with very dark things with humor and just being dark humored, right? And very fucked up situations. And my past life and previous jobs have had crazy things happen to me. So, and I just push that shit down and I just move on, right? So, like, it could be done. But, like, that's just,
Yeah, but at what point is it like almost that religious concept where it's like the information you have
that's what I'm
can
saying, though, right?
can literally form an entire new way of thinking about the universe and
Bro,
like everything.
this the deep state passing more false information to mislead the public. Whoa, what are you? Were you 5 minutes behind everything we're saying? This fucking yeah, I know. We just said that 15 minutes ago. Jesus Christ! Did you have a 15-minute delay over there in Jersey? What the fuck is happening? I just forgot my train of thought because I was so mad with that statement.
uh no, I think it's interesting to think about the idea of like these people, like, how many people would have this information? Like, are we talking about,
Oh, the religious
100,
thing.
200, 300, 400?
Right.
And then yeah,
Remind me.
yeah, go back.
Remind me because I'm gonna forget. Sorry. Tom DeLonge, Blink 182. Tom DeLonge. No, he's all
Yeah.
into the UFO. Okay. Talking about religion. This is why I'm bringing it up and cutting off. It ties in. Um, he had an interesting tweet where he was like kind of dunking on some guy who was like shitting on aliens and stuff, and he was like, actually, and then he listed like a bunch of stuff that he knows, so quote unquote, and he said one of the things that they could do, the aliens, is steal and contain human souls,
Mm.
which
Well,
that requires more explanation, Tom. You can't just drop that and be like, all right, right. Also, teleportation. Like, I don't give a fuck about teleportation. Go back to the soul thing. Go back to that. That's crazy.
well, I mean, there's this idea, right, of like some of the people who do believe in the alien stuff believe rather that these things have been here for a very, very long time, rather than are relatively new from, say, the 1940s or 50s. And I
Yeah.
think it gets broken up into two different classes. Two that believe sort of the tipping point was the atomic era. So there's a lot of people who believe that UFOs didn't really exist and these things didn't really exist until they began monitoring us, and they didn't monitor us until we discovered the atom bomb and this stuff and all these things. I don't really buy into that as much because there's a lot of history stuff that points to sort of alien existence, or at least UFOs at the least, or things that were in the sky that people did not understand that didn't look like meteors, because they didn't really write them down as meteors.
Even biblical painting with Ezekiel Elliott. Jesus Christ, I was thinking of football and aliens at the same exact time. Ezekiel, the right, he went off to chariot of fire, and that was the whole. I'm sure you ever hear that story. I know you're Jewish, but you ever hear that story at all in the Bible?
Yes, I believe so.
So essentially, real quick, there's a character. His character Ezekiel,
This
and
cool guy.
this cool guy, super chill, gave cigarettes to kids, super cool dude. Every party at his house. They say that he was picked up and ascended into like a chariot of fire and like taken off into like like into the heavens. And I was like, that sounds like an alien abduction. So there's like a lot of stories like that. Even in paintings, there's like UFOs and paintings that are like like biblical paintings, and you're like, well, how the fuck they don't fucking know? Like how would they know aliens and shit? Also, how about all like the old statues with like look like fucking people in spacesuits and shit like that? So like it is. This is what I'm saying. I don't believe it's nothing. I do believe it's something. I just don't believe it's what they're saying it is. That's it. I don't believe it's
Yeah,
off-world life.
I
I think
think
it's
I
something.
agree with you there. I mean, I agree with you. It's not exactly what they're portraying it as. I do think it's interesting that at this point we have some sort of, they've said this stuff out loud, or at least this guy has, and people have talked about it, and so you can't really take it back. And now, now they're going to be forced to actually answer for things when it happens publicly, which would be hopefully a little bit better. There's stuff like this whole balloon thing that happened, and I think everybody wrote that off because they went, "Oh, well, it's a Chinese balloon," and then there was a bunch of test balloons and stuff. But there were some that still haven't been explained, specifically the one that was shot off the coast of Alaska that they shot down, which they were very secretive about,
Oh,
that was larger. That one was able to block their radar systems and was actively jamming different things that they had on the ground and on the planes that they were trying to track it with. Um, and that thing, they didn't release much about at all. They just sort of shut up about that one and then paid attention to the three other ones. And it's like, yeah, I think there was something there. I think that was probably something weird. that they wanted to cover up. So they were like, "Yeah, there's all these balloons. Look at this."
Also, I have a hard time believing too that like okay, so interdimensionally these things could travel, or off world these things could travel, or they could dip into the ocean without breaking speed, or all this shit, but we could shoot it down with a fucking missile built in the 90s. Like, shut the fuck up. Like,
So
it just doesn't make sense.
I actually don't think most of them are going to be shot down, and this is what I think he was careful to say. And the stuff was that we had downed vehicles. What he's talking about, in my opinion, and what I think this points to is, he mentions directly the story of the one from Italy that was involved with Italy being passed off to Germany and this whole thing, and then eventually coming back to the U.S. And then there was another one that he mentioned, but the point there is that I think the crafts will crash, and that's just a statistical anomaly. If you think about it in the context of a highway, right? Even if you have
Right,
a
no, I
hundred
get you.
thousand
Right,
people on a highway that are perfect drivers, you're still going to have people that fly off the road and have accidents
right.
occasionally. And so that's sort of the concept: is that if you have a universe that maybe has a bunch of other people flying around in other directions, eventually you're going to have people that just sort of find their way here on accident.
No, for
Uh,
sure. But haven't they said that we've shot things down?
uh, I think they mentioned something about backdooring, like another time period, like back in the 60s, they were talking about, or 50s,
It's
that
even
stuff was
worse.
shot down.
It's
Well,
even worse. That's even worse technology on our end. What are you
but
talking
you
about?
have to keep in mind you have things going on during that
The
time, like
aliens were also in the
Vietnam.
60s, and they were also just stoned, and then they forgot to put the shields up.
Well, no, but you just have more like weird thing to say because it's just a weird spread. But for instance, like if you look at the numbers, I guarantee you there were way more active military people with firearms and guns that could shoot at planes during something like World War II or Vietnam active on the battlefield at one given time than there is now in
No, I
context
totally
of
agree. But my point is, I
right.
don't think a bullet is gonna do it. Like I think they have the tech to stop a bullet and a missile. That's my fucking point. Like
The
I don't
problem
understand.
is it's like if they were humans, right? If they were some interdimensional travelers, then they would know that. They'd know we'd have guns, they would build their stuff to withstand that. If they were aliens, or if they were just drones that weren't meant to be manned, so you didn't really care if they got blown up, right? We don't really care. When we fly a reconnaissance drone, our
Agreed.
military does, they don't give a fuck if it gets blown up.
Right.
And that gives them intel also, by the way. So it's just like that is what it is. So if they're useless, right, from that degree, they're a drone program of some kind of some other people, human or otherwise, then that kind of makes sense. You don't really need them to be cloaked. You don't care about whether they make it or not. You're just sort of, and you don't really care whether we get a hold of them because the assumption probably is that the technology isn't really all that much better than what we have already.
Dude, this is why that 4chan guy I was telling you about sounds legit, because this is another thing he was saying. No, this is seriously, because again, people were asking him like, why are we allowed to recover them? Why are we allowed to recover bodies? He said again, what he's been told. He doesn't, because he didn't directly work with this field, but he's like, what I've heard or what I've been told is they view that as a, hey, that is what it is. Like, oh, you guys died in that crash. That sucks. We ain't coming for you. Like, they don't
Right.
have that camaraderie type thing. Like,
Well,
we get
that's
treated
why I
as
hear
this.
these people
Yeah.
say things like, oh, well, if we downed an alien, it could be dangerous because you don't know what would happen. It's like, what do you think happens if we send a guy over to Afghanistan and he gets caught by Jihad Joe in some cave? Like, he gets cut up and killed and we don't give a fuck. That's what happens. Like,
Right.
there's not a big public outpouring most of the time because if the government doesn't want you to hear about the fact that that guy was captured, they're not going to let you hear about the fact that that guy was captured. You're
Right.
one dude.
Right.
You've got what, 5, 6 family members that are going to make a fuss about it. Those people are easy to shut up. Like,
Right.
it's like that. That's more of that. That's the reality of the
But
situation.
that's what
It's
this
like,
guy was saying in his 4chan post. He's like, yeah, he's like,
yeah,
again, he's like, they're built to spec. He's like, they're all built specifically for a specific job. And he's like, and if they crash or he said if they get shot down, which makes me believe that they can get shot down, which makes me believe that I don't know how believable it is. But he said, yeah, he's like, they just view it at, like, again, they just view it as like a fucking L,
Right.
and they're like, well,
So,
sorry.
is it possible that this is simply Dr. Robotnik creating a drone army in the past in the 1940s? He's working with the Nazis,
Well,
and he's been his drone program.
well, you know what we need to do? We need to go back in time and build a Sonic the Hedgehog and Tails program to counteract the fucking Robotnik program.
We'll just remaking Captain America, but it's
Sonic,
the Red Skull's edited out, and it's like
Dr. Robotnik.
it's Dr. Robotnik.
And it's Sonic. He goes from like a little hedgehog to like a fucking jacked, like fucking hedgehog. He's like, ah, and Tails is fucking Winter Soldier.
Oh,
One of his tails is just metal. Fucking, he starts speaking Russian.
yeah, I think that's the 4chan guy, whoever he may be, uh, is honestly probably onto it. I mean, the reality is you can't like. Again, it's one of those things where you're just never gonna know. Like it's sort of like it's sort of like the religion thing in a way, depending on how you look at it. In my
Yeah.
opinion, but that's different opinions. But it's
No, you're right about the religion thing too. It's like, hey, do I know definitively? Of course I don't know, right? It could be bullshit. It's like, but I
yeah,
believe it to be true, and like I'm gonna go off the basis that it is true, off of what I believe.
right.
So
I
yeah,
I I think that there's way too much weird oddities throughout history that I've seen where I'm like, yeah, no, we don't have any like. Just think about the fact that you can't even like really visit most of the North Pole and like or Antarctica rather.
it's all weird. Yeah,
Like it's all like blocked off and shit and all that kind of stuff. It's like I don't know. I think it might all loop into like this whole concept of like ancient aliens, which I don't buy into entirely, but this concept of like it might loop into like old human existence and stuff like that, and something we just haven't really discovered yet because people don't want us to. Is also kind of intriguing to me. But I'm gonna look into that video that you shared now. That's gonna be my new project.
yeah. MH370. It's interesting.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's about perfect. We're at about an hour. I know it's late over there where you're at. Uh,
Undoubtedly.
and but I think we can close it out. I think we talked about everything we need to. Is there anything else that you can think of?
I mean, we could talk about this for fucking hours. There's so much stuff to talk about. But yeah,
Yes, but
yeah,
yeah.
no, yeah, we could end it.
Okay. Well, I will talk to y'all later.
Oh
Take it
wait, real
easy.
quick, since
Oh.
this is live, come see me tomorrow,
Oh yeah.
Philly, Philly tomorrow. 12 Steps Down comedy show, awesome show in South Philly. Coming out to that, September 1st, Fifth Borough Comedy Festival. Going back to my home place of trash, Staten Island, to do the comedy festival out there. September 1st, I think it's an 8 p.m. show at the North Cantina. Coming out to that, and then September other shit too. But some just trying to think of the big ones in bigger cities. September 13th, Speakeasy Comedy in Philly. It's also a really fun show. Also South Philly, I believe, coming out to that. And all my other shit at Adam Nutter goes in the Cult of Us podcast. It's fucking awesome. We talk mad shit. It's Cult of Us, youtube.com/Cult of Us, and Adam Nutter on Twitter. Yay.
Yes. Good Twitter follow. Can
Good Twitter
confirm.
follow. I am crazy.
All right, everybody. Peace.